Hey y'all, if you're new to my channel, my name is Courtney Denise Shepherd, and I post faith-based content, all kinds of lifestyle things, and I'm going to be posting some amazing, exciting things to come with my husband. If you looked on the channel page, you see that it has changed a little bit. So go ahead and subscribe now because you all do not want to miss out on any of that stuff. But today I'm going to be sharing my testimony with you guys. And it's crazy if you've been here for a while. I've been posting for years and I've never shared my full testimony. I actually posted a video a while ago and it stayed up for like a few days and I took it down. And I can't remember if it was shame or guilt or what, or if I just didn't even like the video, but I took it down. And recently it's been on my heart to share my testimony because I believe that testimonies are powerful and they're helpful. And I don't want y'all to think when you come to my channel that I just came out of the womb with a Bible in my left hand and I've just been loving the Lord and serving him my whole life and I've never made any mistakes. No. And so I believe there's a lot of power in authenticity and transparency. And I want to make sure that I am always showing up as my true, real, authentic self. And so part of that is my story. There is a backstory as to how I got here. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing with y'all today. So bear with me. We're going to start at the beginning. I grew up in a Christian home. It was nominally Christian. So Christian by name, if that makes sense. I was raised by a single mother, and yeah, life was not easy. Life was actually pretty hard. There are some things that I don't feel like I can share just because it's more of my mom's story than my own. But what I can share is that my mom was not always present when I was younger, and that we spent some time in a shelter when I was younger as well. And so our childhood was very abnormal, but I have a sister, by the way. My sister and I, it was all we knew. And so it kind of felt normal to us. And anybody who's grown up in a dysfunctional home or in a home that isn't like the status quo, like middle class, happy family, you know that you can become used to what other people would claim as abnormalities. But when I was younger, I didn't really know that it was abnormal. And my mom took us to church, but what I was saying earlier about nominal Christianity, like we didn't really read the Bible outside of church. We weren't really like heavily involved to the point to where it bled out to the rest of our lives. But church was something that we would do on Sundays as a young child. I also spent a lot of time with my grandparents, being that my mom was single. She worked hard. She had to work a lot for what she had, and she provided so well for us. She was such a strong woman, working 6 days a week. Sometimes she would clean houses on her day off on a Saturday, just to make sure that we had everything that we needed and more. She just went above and beyond for us. She worked so hard. And so because of that, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. Whenever I would get let out from school, I would be at their house. And that's really where my grandparents were like, we going to church every Wednesday, every Sunday, y'all getting involved in something. And so I joined the choir. I would go to Sunday school and things like that whenever I was staying with them. And so that's really where I saw like, okay, my grandma taught me how to pray. I would hear her quote scriptures whenever we were in church together, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, I would see my granddaddy serve as an usher, and so I grew up in kind of like that environment. But also I would see things outside of church, even in that setting, where I was like, that really don't go with what the pastor just said. And so there was this inconsistency. And so when you grow up seeing things like that, you think that the inconsistency is okay. Like you think that it's okay to hear one thing and kind of not take it home with you or act out in a different way. Or you just see people living crazy. Like my family, oh Lord, I'm sure y'all have y'all's own testimonies about y'all's families. But I saw all kinds of things growing up, and we will leave it at that. So I did see Christianity around me, and I saw some good examples of it in my family. Like my grandfather's sisters were, oh my gosh, they were like walking saints. And I remember when I was younger, I used to say, like, whenever I get older, I want to be like that. I want to be serious about my faith like that. And so I grew up, and I think I was like the quote unquote good kid. My mom instilled in me, like, you have to achieve, you have to do well, you have to get good grades, you have to get into a good school, you need to get a scholarship, go to college. My grandparents really pushed nursing on me. They're like, you know, it's a stable job, it's a steady income, you'll always have a job. And so it was just like given, like, you will be this and you will do well, because I made good grades in school. I was like a quote unquote good kid. And so, yeah, they just were like, they saw my future, and my mother really, really didn't want me to end up in the same situation that she was in. And so she put a lot of pressure on me, but I appreciate it now in hindsight, because I did go to college and get my degree. But fast forward to that point in my life, when I was in high school, I got like my first boyfriend, and I grew up, I was like stick thin, kind of awkward looking. I had glasses, I had braces, and I really did not get a lot of male attention. And so when I first got this boyfriend, like, I just lost my mind. I was in puppy love season, like, oh my gosh. And so I was just all about him. And then toward the end of high school, he started to cheat on me. It became a very dysfunctional relationship. And like, I remember one of the first times he cheated on me was with like one of my friends, and then it just continued over and over again. Going into college, I was still like in and out of this relationship with him, and he was doing Lord knows what, and I would find out about it. And it's so crazy to talk about now and to think about. Like, it's insane, y'all. Like, I remember one day showing up at a girl's house because I saw his car outside, and like just banging on the door, going crazy. Like, that's how, I mean, I was just gone, because all of my life growing up, I had been taught, you have to achieve, you have to do this. And so I'm thinking, like, what makes you valuable subconsciously, and I know that the people around me did not mean to do this, but when you give your kids those messages, the way that I had interpreted it was, when you achieve is when you're valued. Like, because I would get the claps and all of that whenever I achieved something. My mom was a very, like, she wasn't emotional at all, especially when we grew up. And so, like, to get good emotions or hugs or love from her, it typically would be like around when I achieved something. And so that's where my value and my worth came from. It did not come from the Lord. I did not have a personal relationship with him. Just based on everything that I told you at the beginning of this video, and being conditioned to kind of like separate those two areas of my life, I did not have a personal relationship with my God. I did not read the Bible, like none of that. And so I put all of my identity and my self-worth into this relationship. And when he started to cheat on me, yeah, I just felt worthless, and I just felt like I needed to hold on to him, and I needed to get him back, and I needed to win, which was insane, because I felt like if I could get him to stop cheating on me, if I could get him from these other women, then I would be the one who won. And I didn't want to waste all of the previous time that we had had together. I remember feeling like, you know, oh, I spent 5 years with this guy, which would mean like what? I was like 20, because I started dating him in high school. So, oh, I spent like 5 years with this guy. Like, I don't want to waste all that time. Little do I know it, I have the rest of my life ahead of me. You know, I'm wasting time continuing to try to get him back. Like, it was insane. I was insane. And so, yeah, I went through that period. Eventually, I got fed up, and I decided to just walk away from that. And during that time, I started doing pageants. So I walked away from him. I joined an organization. I met a lot of new friends. I started doing pageants. And so I still shifted my self-worth to another thing. And when I started doing pageants, I was like, okay, now if I win this crown, I think I may have, that time frame may have overlapped a little bit, because I remember thinking like, he's gonna want to be with me after I win, or he's gonna, you know, regret all the decisions that he's made after I won. And I was associating my self-worth again with another achievement or another thing, still not God. And so I just got wrapped up into pageants, and I started doing really well in it. I started working at Hooters. I think it was, yeah, I started working at Hooters a few years into college. And so I was doing like the Hooters pageants, and I was heavily involved in like a lot of modeling for the company, and doing a lot of branding things for them. And from the outside looking in, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is so glamorous, this is so great. But I was obtaining these things and accomplishing these things that looked really good to other people, but I still didn't feel whole. I still felt this void. And it's crazy because you hear people talk about like all these things in life, like everything that you've ever wanted. You wanted a degree, you wanted money, you wanted a mate, like whatever it may be, and you get it and it doesn't make you feel complete. Because, and I found out like I was seeking all of these things that only the Lord could fulfill in me. And for some reason, I was still coming up short and still feeling empty. And so during that time, I'm doing all these pageants and all that, and just a hot mess, partying every single day, because I ended up failing out of my nursing program. If you want to hear about that, go and watch the very first video that I uploaded to this channel. If I remember, I will put it in the description box below. But I ended up failing out of the nursing program that I was in at school because I was doing too much. Like I was a straight A student before this. I was doing great, and I just had too much going on. I started like getting caught up in all the things and losing focus pretty much. And so I failed out of my nursing program. And so then I had all the time in the world. So I started going out like Tuesday through Sunday. Like I remember me and my friend, the only day we would not go out was Monday. Like we would work and go out like every single night. It was insane. I have no idea how I survived because I'm in bed by like 9 p.m. these days. But yeah, so I was going out all the time, and then I was meeting these guys, and I had this mindset during this time period: no one will ever hurt me again the way that my high school boyfriend / college boyfriend did, right? And so I was like, no one's ever going to get close to me like that again. And I felt like I had this guard up to protect myself. And so I was getting into these situations because they were advantageous. They looked good. The guy had this or that status, power, money, whatever it was, because I was really into materialism at that time. I think because my job and my values just started switching. It's crazy because I grew up like not thinking like this at all, right? And at least going to church, you know? And so, yeah, my whole mindset changed. And I just remember feeling like I was using people, and I was using them before they could hurt me. And then my grandparents got sick. So I told you my grandparents were heavily involved in my life growing up, because my mom was just so busy working. And first my grandmother got sick, and we were so close. I would go and see my grandma like every day. She got sick, she passed away super quick, got a diagnosis and passed away super quick. And then my grandpa just started to grieve. Like, he loved that woman so much. He just grieved, and it was so hard to watch. And eventually he got sick a few years later. And I remember when my grandfather got sick, just feeling this, it's insane. Just feeling like, oof, you need to go back to church. And I hadn't completely stopped going to church, but I was like one of those, I forgot what they're called. Christian, Christmas, Easter, something Christian, like where like you would go sporadically, like mainly on the holidays. It was like that. And I would still say I was a believer, but I don't know. Like looking back, I'm like, I don't know what I would have labeled myself, but I would have labeled myself Christian, but from, you know, the outside looking in now, I'm like, I don't know. I just was very much a poor representation of Christianity. And so I remember during that time just feeling like I needed to go back to church. And so I started going. And I went back to my family church, and I just had this desire to just study the word and to read the word and to know it and to know God more, to know Jesus Christ more. Because growing up, I wasn't even really sure about Jesus Christ, honestly. I knew that there was a God because it was obvious to me. I didn't think that everything got here from nothing. But like the whole Trinity thing really confused me. And so I was unsure about that. But during this time, I was serious about it all. And I was like, I believe, okay? And so I went back to church, and then one of my sorority sisters got baptized at another church. And I remember going to her baptism. Oh my goodness. I loved the church immediately. Like, my family had gone to this one church since my grandparents had moved to Louisville together, which is where I'm from. So since they had moved to this city together, and, you know, decided to root and start a family and all that, my whole family, their kids' would go to this church. And so, yeah, I decided, like, I'm about to go to this other church because I feel like I'm being fed spiritually here. I feel like I can understand the word, and I just love it. So I just started visiting. I visited for about a month, and then I decided to join. And I also just started to study. I started to look for things that would help me to understand the word. I was looking things up online. I was watching other people's sermons. I was on YouTube, like looking at these Bible studies and everything. And I was just so on fire. And everything began to change. It is so crazy. Everything began to change. I started to go to conferences instead of going out. I started to have to shift relationships and how I was showing up in them. And maybe you weren't the friend that could pour into me anymore, but I could help you and pour into you. And there has to be this boundary here. I started making new friends. I started serving in church, singing in the choir, everything. And that whole thing in the beginning, when I would look to my aunts and say like, oh, eventually I want to be like them. During my 20s, I would say that because I was like, I'm not done partying yet, right? So whenever I'm in my 60s, my 70s, whatever, that's when I'll get serious about the Lord. And it was just really arrogant to say, because who's to say that I'm going to make it to my 60s? And life had been so unfulfilling. And when I finally surrendered to Christ, I realized, wow, life is so sweet with him. Like, what if I had waited and I kept, you know, being this hamster in this hamster wheel, just chasing after all these things, chasing after men, money, materialism. Oh my goodness. There's so many things that I have not even shared that now are popping into my head that I'm like, oh my gosh. Materialism was like on a whole nother level for me. The way I showed up on social media, the friends that I had, it was just all about getting things and someone, and it just was complete emptiness now that I look back. And I just can't believe that I would have missed out on the joy that I experienced, and it was never too late. And so I want to encourage somebody, if you're watching this video, do not wait. Do not put it off. You may be thinking, Christianity doesn't look fun, or it seems stuffy, or I don't want to go to church every Sunday. And everybody online is talking about how they're totally against the church, but they're for a relationship. They're totally against religion. And really, the religious ritualism is what Jesus was coming to attack, not religion, not the church, right? The church came into being as Jesus ascended and sent the Holy Spirit to us, right? So whatever, we're supposed to be gathering, and it is such a fulfilling thing to just serve him and be in a loving community that's committed to serving him as well. And now that I have this perspective of it, oh my goodness, I would never, ever postpone it. And so I just felt like all of these chains were being broken off of me. My perspective was changing. I was getting a new insight. Like, when they say that the Lord makes you new, he truly does. He gives us a new beginning. And I started to finally find my self-worth and my value. And it wasn't in men. I wasn't constantly looking for someone. I wasn't constantly looking for something. I wasn't constantly looking for a come up and this life where someone was going to marry me and save me. Like, my identity was truly wrapped up into that, y'all. Like, I promise. I was like constantly looking no matter where I was. And now I knew I've been saved. I don't need a man to save me. I've been saved. I've had worth and value. And now that I'm connected to the source of that worth and value, my Lord. So that's just what I wanted to share with you all today. I hope that it resonated with someone. I hope that it gives life to someone, it gives courage to someone, or it just simply pushes you closer to Jesus. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.